I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. The Department of Justice has just busted an insurrectionist who's involved in a criminal case before a federal court in Washington, D.C., lying to the federal judge and saying that he was going to Washington, D.C. to watch another January 6th insurrectionist criminal trial, but the real intent and purpose was to go hang out and party at the CPAC convention or the CPAC convention. And thanks to a bunch of social media posts that were there, the Department of Justice was able to show the judge that this insurrectionist was lying. So who's the insurrectionist that I'm referring to? The insurrectionist's name is Gabriel Augustine Garcia, who's currently being tried for obstruction and trespassing. Here's a photo of Gabriel, just so you can see the photo, and just give you some facts about Gabriel. He videotaped himself inside the Capitol building and uploaded it to Facebook. This was around 2:19 p.m. on January 6th, and this is what happened. He's seen on the video taping himself, and Garcia states, "We just went ahead and stormed the Capitol. It's about to get ugly." And then you see him advancing from the rear of the area to the front of the standoff, where members of the Capitol Police are positioned in a line. Just as Garcia approaches the line of Capitol Police officers, an unidentified woman is yelling at the officer, quote, you are not on our side." So Garcia continues his advance, shifting around and past individuals so that he's at the very front of the crowd, directly opposite the line of Capitol Police officers. As he maneuvers to the front of the line, Garcia joins the crowd and starts chanting USA. At minute 134, a man tries to run through the line of Capitol Police officers. The officers respond with force, which prompts Garcia to shout, you fucking traitors, fuck you," as the United States Capitol Police officers try to maintain positive control of the man that just rushed the police line. Garcia yells, "Grab him," seemingly instructing the individuals around him to retrieve the man from the Capitol Police officers. Garcia is holding a large American flag, which he drops into the skirmish in an apparent attempt to assist the individuals who are struggling with the Capitol Police officers. Garcia is extremely close to the Capitol Police officers, so close that their names are clearly visible in the video. Garcia yells at minute 209, "You ain't stopping a million. You ain't gonna hold a million back today. Sorry, ain't holding a million of us." And there is more. And then you see him at minute 326, again yelling fucking traitors. And then he joins people chanting "our house." It goes on and on and on and on. But that's who this individual is. That's who Garcia is, just to give you some context. But here's a filing by the Department of Justice where they explain the circumstances whereby Gabriel Garcia basically had told the judge in a filing and asked for permission from the Department of Justice that Garcia wanted to come from Florida, where he lived, so he can watch a trial in Washington, D.C. The court then requested his full itinerary, to which Garcia responded, "Here's all the places I'm going to be. I'm going to be staying at an RV." But then it became clear what his real intention was when he lied to the court about where he was going to be, and he lied to the Department of Justice. He was actually at CPAC, because the CPAC convention, CPAC being the biggest Republican convention, the group that says we are domestic terrorists. That's what CPAC has on their stage. There's big signage that says we are domestic terrorists. I just want you to reflect on that again for a minute, that this is who the Republican Party is. At their main convention, it says we are domestic terrorists. And the big panel of the day at CPAC was a group of January 6th terrorists who CPAC referred to as political prisoners, and they featured these January 6th insurrectionists talking about them being persecuted by the government. I kid you not. So this is exactly where Garcia wanted to be, to hang out with the other insurrectionists, and the Department of Justice spotted it. They found out that he was there for approximately 12 and a half hours at CPAC over the course of 2 days, and then attended very briefly another insurrection insurrectionist trial, but as far as the Department of Justice knows, did not in any way meet with the lawyer who he said that he was going to meet with or engage in any of the conduct. And as the Department of Justice says, look, this isn't about attending a political event or not attending a political event. It's about repeatedly lying to the court over and over and over again. These January 6th insurrectionists who want to feign that they are being persecuted or whatever, they just continue to lie about everything, and they are not to be trusted, and they repeatedly demonstrate that. And even in the past where they've told federal courts, I'm remorseful and this and that, once they try to get the deal they want, they then leave and they go, I've been persecuted. So let me just read from you some of the portions of this filing that the government made. The United States, by and through its attorneys, and the United States for the District of Columbia respectfully submits this response to defendant Gabriel Garcia's motion for permission to travel to the District of Columbia to observe a trial. On Sunday, February 26, 2023, defense contacted undersigned's counsel to request the government's position on defendant Garcia traveling to Washington, D.C. for the stated purpose of watching trial. That very same week, before the government had responded on Monday, February 27, 2023, defense filed a motion to travel. In the motion, defense stated that defendant wished to travel to Washington, D.C. to observe trial and confer with his former pro hoc vice counsel. Just the pro hoc vice counsel is an out-of-state counsel. He stated that observing a different defendant's trial would assist with his trial preparation and his ultimate decision to go to trial or enter a change of plea. Defendant represented he would stay in Virginia or Maryland, not Washington, D.C. Undersigned counsel, meaning the government, responded to defense and represented that the government would not object to defendant traveling to Washington, D.C. for the stated purpose of watching trial, so long as the same conditions were in place as previously imposed when defendant traveled to Washington, D.C. for the same purpose. Defendant filed an updated, unopposed motion. The court granted the motion in part. The court's order noted that defendant did not explain why a second trip is necessary or why there is suddenly exigent need to attend a trial that had been going on since December. Nevertheless, the court granted defendant's request to travel and remain in Washington, D.C. The court imposed several conditions, including that the trip to Washington, D.C. was for, quote, the limited purpose of attending a trial and meeting with defendant's former pro hoc vice attorney and current counsel. Quote, this is from the order. The defendant may attend meetings with his counsel or former counsel in their Washington, D.C. offices and obtain meals within the immediate vicinity of his hotel or his lawyer's offices, but he may not visit any other locations within the District of Columbia without advance permission of the court. So what does the defendant do here? Does he ask permission from the court? No. The order goes on to say, though, defendant was also restricted from meeting with, quote, any individuals associated with any of the trials he has asked to attend outside the presence of his attorney, and was given a curfew of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. while visiting the district. The court ordered that defendant must provide, quote, his precise itinerary, including the date and time of his arrival and departure, and the address where he will be staying, to pretrial services. Defendant then filed a motion to clarify. In the motion, defendant requested permission to observe a second trial in the media spillover room only, as well as trial before this court. The court again granted defendant's motion, and in doing so noted, quote, there have been 3 motions filed in 3 days, and not one has suggested that there have been any exigent circumstances justifying the belated rush nature of these requests. The court modified its order to permit defendant to attend the additional trials. Defendant then provided the United States Probation Office with the following information about the trip. I'm currently traveling up north to D.C. in my RV. If I make any stops, it will be to sleep along the rest stop. I will be staying in my RV, which will be parked at, and then it gave an address. I will be traveling back Saturday evening. Any issues or questions, please let me know. On Thursday, March 2nd, defendant arrived in Alexandria, Virginia at about 4:15 p.m. Defendant then went straight to National Harbor, Maryland to attend CPAC. the Conservative Political Action Coalition Conference, or what I call CULTPAC, CPAC DC 23, at National Harbor, where he remained from 5 p.m. to 9:27 p.m. Defendant did not attend any court proceeding on March 2nd. On Friday, March 3rd, 2023, defendant attended Gashjansky trial with his attorney for less than 3 hours. Defendant then traveled back to Maryland to CPAC again, where he remained from approximately 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. It appears defendant's last-minute request to travel to Washington, D.C. was not for the stated reason of his trip. In fact, although defendant's travel request was justified by his need to observe trial to, quote, assist in trial preparation and consult with his former attorney, he spent only a few hours at trial and did not, to our knowledge, meet with his former pro hoc vice attorney, but spent 12.5 hours in National Harbor at CPAC 2023, taking pictures and socializing with fellow January 6 defendants. Here is one such photo with Joseph Pi Anan. Thomas is what he calls himself. I had the honor of meeting with my fellow January 6er today at CPAC. He is a warrior. Defendant did not include information about the convention in his itinerary, despite the order from the court that he provide his, quote, precise itinerary. Thus, undersigned counsel contacted defense counsel regarding defendant's whereabouts on his recent trip to Washington, D.C., and about defendant's attendance at CPAC 2023. Defense counsel represented that defendant accompanied counsel on March 3rd to the Gashjansky trial from about 9:30 to 12:30 and stated that attending CPAC was not a violation of defendant's conditions. Defendant then posted this on social media. And on social media, he calls himself January 6 Captain, J6 Captain, Gabriel Garcia with an American flag. Don't ever disgrace our American flag like that, you traitor. And then it goes on to say, government, why did your client go to CPAC? Attorney, is outside the circus district? Government, you stated your client was there with you to the afternoon, but he was at National Harbor. Can you please clarify? My answer on that would be I've said because I got tired of the false prosecution and looking at the jury panel that all looked like they belong on some MSNBC panel with their double masks made me so sick I decided to exit and leave the fucking district for good. Any further questions? The government goes on to say in their motion, the government is surprised by defendant's whereabouts on his recent trip. The government consented to defendant's travel out of Florida to Washington, D.C. for the limited stated purpose of attending trial and meeting with counsel. It appears, however, that the exigent circumstances warranting defendant's numerous last-minute requests to travel to Washington, D.C. on these precise dates was for the purpose of attending CPAC, not watching trial. This behavior is not new. In the past, this court has recognized that defendant may have been disingenuous with both the court and pretrial services in his travel request. Here, too, despite the court requesting he provide a precise itinerary, defendant failed to mention his attendance at CPAC, where he spent the majority of his trip. Finally, it goes on to say, this issue is not that defendant attended a political event. The real problem is that defendant has repeatedly demonstrated that his representations to the court should be doubted, where he purports to need to watch a January 6 trial to make decisions about his own case. In reality, he used, quote, watching a trial as a pretext for attending an out-of-state conference that featured a panel of January 6 defendants. Now, I want to reflect on this just for one moment. Just think about that the main Republican convention right now is featuring January 6 terrorists, and that they are inviting all these insurrectionists to show up, such that the insurrectionists on trial are flocking there to basically celebrate and party with other insurrectionists. And you have the Department of Justice just saying, look, if it says prepare a precise itinerary, just tell us where you're going, because guess what? You committed a crime, and this is pretrial detention, and instead of being in jail, you have to report your whereabouts. That's what happens in this process, and they continue to lie and lie. So you want to talk about law and order, what law and order really means, not in the performative BS sense, what law and order really means. It's certainly not what's going on here. It's not what's going on in MAGA Republican world at all. And it is, frankly, every time I read this and I do these stories, like, you know, we've come to expect that this is who the MAGA Republicans are, but it's still shocking. It's still sad that a major American political party, the Republican Party, has been taken over by the ultra MAGA faction, and that they support people like this. And they're viewing Garcia, and I read you what Garcia did in the Capitol, as a hero. As a hero, someone who attacks the Capitol police officers, who calls them effing traitors, who trespassed, who was leading insurrections against us. Horrific. Horrific. We'll keep calling it out here on the MeidasTouch Network, that's for sure. I'm Ben Meiselas. Make sure you hit subscribe. It's free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are marching to 1 million subscribers this month, so make sure you hit subscribe. Also, check us out at Patreon. Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We're got some good exclusive content there. And wherever you get your audio, just search the MeidasTouch podcast. I think you will enjoy it. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas. Again, hit subscribe.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs. It wasn't rigged, you're just a loser. At store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.